A contractor whose development project ran into trouble involving a post-tension slab. A paint manufacturer whose paint caused blocking on the steel sheets onto which logos were printed, rendering the sheets unusable. A medical practitioner whose patient files have been damaged in a fire. What do they all have in common? They're about to submit a claim which could make or break their professional reputations. Welcome to episode 6 of Ensuring Trust with Leppard, a podcast where we unpack the stories behind the Leppard Underwriting team who make it their mission to protect your reputation. If there's one aspect of the underwriting sector that impacts everyone, it's claims. With us at the Leppard offices are Glenn Standen, CEO of Leppard Underwriting, and Fatima Ebrahim, Executive Head of the Claims Department. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glenn, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Why is there a perception that underwriters will do whatever it takes to not pay out?
Okay, so I think there are a few reasons for this. Firstly, risks and covers are often complex and include some grey areas, even though we're hoping all the time that everything is crystal clear.
Yeah.
Secondly, the policy has terms and conditions, and these need to be applied and met at the time of a claim.
Yeah.
When a claim eventuates, there are also circumstances that need to be considered. And unfortunately, we have seen lots of situations in the last while where insureds actually want to be liable, as it suits their commercial interests and keeps their clients happy. So essentially, yes, claims are complex. It is sad that our industry has been tarnished like this, but unfortunately, it's also justified in certain instances. But at the end of the day, it gets to a point where a claim needs to be paid, and now we turn to the claims-paying culture of the insurers. And for us, it's how can we help and pay that claim.
So they say the client is king, but when it comes to claims, there's a percentage of clients that feel like villains. Is there such a thing as the dummy's guide to ensuring your claim is successful?
Well, I don't know so much about the dummy's guide, but being a sort of a detailed person myself, I do believe that the detail is important. Whether it's the detail at the underwriting stage, which is vital so that we can give you the correct covers, or whether it gets to the point of you're trying to institute a claim, the detail that you might not think is important is very important to us. Some of that detail could be the difference between us deciding that your claim is covered in terms of the policy or not. So, to me, number one, detail.
Detail. Fatima, switching over to you. As executive head of the claims department, it's your responsibility to see that all claims are handled correctly and promptly. We've heard that, contrary to perceptions of the industry, Leppard is seriously in the business of promptly delivering on its promises. How is this achieved?
So I think we are extremely cognizant that claims and the handling of those claims are pivotal. And the manner in which claims are dealt with is ultimately the acid test for any insurer. We strongly believe that the way in which we approach claims provides us with a clear and competitive edge in the market. So to achieve this, we have a team of in-house professionals with over 50 years of legal experience. And we appoint service providers that are, in the form of attorneys and adjusters who are at the top of their game and of the highest caliber and are extremely proficient in the insurance space. We are aware that insureds are always very anxious when they're faced with a claim. And as a claims team, we strive to attend to all claims with speed, with efficiency, and with the utmost transparency.
Which is very important.
Absolutely. As an insurer, we ultimately involved very intimately in the claims management process, and we retain at all times a level of open channel to our insureds in order to enable them to communicate easily and freely and constantly keep them apprised of all developments that happen in the matter. We understand the financial and reputational impact that a claim can pose on a business. And I think with that in mind, we ensure that claims are dealt with efficiently. We strongly believe that the payment of legitimate claims represents the delivery of our promise, which goes to the very heart of our business. And the excellence in our claims management and claims handling is what we deem to be the ultimate differentiator in the market.
So, can you provide us with some examples of how you've assisted an insured? I remember in a previous episode, there was one of your colleagues said, it's not about being on the other side of the table. It's being on the same side of the table with your insureds and walking them through the process.
Yeah, I mean, I echo those sentiments completely. There are so many examples, and I'll try and highlight a few.
Sure.
We had a claim quite recently where the claim hugely exceeded the insured's limit of indemnity. You can understand the insured was extremely anxious, and the sustainability of his business was at huge risk, including his business reputation. But we were understanding and compassionate of the insured's position, and understood the needs that were required to be met. And we ensured that he constantly engaged with us as his insurer and with the attorney. And our commitment together with that of our service providers resulted in the claim being settled within his limit of indemnity. And this left a very happy and relieved insured. So he really appreciated that. We have another matter where an accountant submitted a claim after incorrectly submitting a tax return to SARS. And this resulted in the client or the third party having an absolutely huge exposure to SARS. And in turn, the insured was faced with a massive claim against him. The insured in this instance was a leader in tax and advisory and was absolutely petrified regarding the repercussions that this claim could bring to his business. The issues were complicated, they were technical, and we appointed experts within the tax and insurance field to assist the insured. And we were able to achieve a very favorable result in that matter, where SARS actually waived the penalties and interest. And, this was a massive result for the insured. And he actually commented afterwards, he said, the manner in which the claim was handled and has resulted in him actually retaining this client and his reputation left intact, which I think is an absolute success for us.
It's a bonus. And I guess, there's something to be said for when you take out insurance on anything and for the claim to go through you can actually feel like it's a reward in and of itself. Like, I did the due diligence of taking out insurance and here it's working out.
Yeah, and I think this, reaffirms our commitment and our belief that communication with empathy builds trust. And in all claims, we strive to make our insureds feel normal again through a purpose-led solution.
Glenn, let's play a game of did they really claim that? Care to share one or two stories of what appeared to be a highly unlikely claim that actually settled?
Yeah, so maybe not so unlikely, but sort of just one or two interesting matters that sort of popped to mind. And one was late December one year when I got a call to say our client who supplies chemicals to the agri industry has just been notified by a flower grower that the entire crop of flowers that was due to the European market for Valentine's Day has just started to wilt and sort of die off, and they're holding our client liable. No. And so on investigation, the product they used was quite correct. There was nothing wrong with the product. But under the conditions that those flowers were being grown, that product wasn't suitable. And there were no labels and warnings on the product to that effect. So, millions of rands later, the flower grower was compensated for the loss of flowers. But I venture there was a few Valentines on Valentine's Day that battled to get the flowers they may have been looking for. Another one was corks for wine bottles, and something that seems so simple and something that we're so accustomed to.
What could go wrong with corks? I mean, come on.
Well, apparently corks have a tannin in them, and there's a certain level that is acceptable, and beyond that, not. Now, they do sort of do quality control checks on these corks, but in a particular batch, there were apparently a certain percentage that were above that level. So all the wine bottled, labeled, top vintage from a top brand,
Yeah.
and suddenly he's getting calls to say some of these bottles have got a taste and it's not acceptable. So upon investigation, it's discovered that some of these corks are problematic. So fast forward, he's not willing to send out his wine anymore. He wants to be compensated, and rightly so, because his brand was at stake by sending out tainted wine. So that was settled. However, we did insist that we took the wine as salvage and managed to sell it off at a really cheap price, unlabeled, as basically house wine, to recoup some of our losses. So, yeah, a couple of interesting stories.
As well it ends.
Exactly.
Fatima, you love watching sports.
How did you guess?
Kindred spirits. How much of your time is spent thinking of the types of liabilities or the types of claims that could be accrued during a 40,000 person spectator event?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I've been involved in claims for just on 15 years, and the claims are deeply part of who I am. No matter where I go, I always consider how claims could manifest from things I see based on my own experience. And I always tend to look out for disclaimers, and, I'm very quick in imparting quick risk management tips to business owners, to the extreme dismay of my family, I must tell you. But the example you've presented is apt, and when attending something like a big sporting event or just ambling through a mall, I often think of how slip and trips can occur from slick surfaces or the adequacy of a building design, kids falling due to a faulty or non-existing railing, falling objects from a lack of safety netting, or fires, or even escalator-associated injuries.
You probably watched too many reruns of Final Destination growing up, didn't you?
Oh. Yeah. But I think, everybody should take the time in thinking about these sort of claims, especially as business owners or professionals. And in doing so, I think they will know better and they'll do better. And this will hopefully mitigate claims in the future.
So what are your top tips for notifying of a claim? What are some of the do's and don'ts?
Yeah, so I think it is very important to reaffirm that the insured must give written notice to the insurer as soon as practicable, not only of any actual claim made against it by the third party, but also of any circumstance which could potentially give rise to a claim being made by a third party in the future. The purpose of an early notification is essentially to alert insurers of the possibility of an action so that the insurer can investigate the circumstances early on, which may give rise to a claim at the earliest possible time, and under the most favorable conditions in order to minimize the potential liability in the event of a claim materializing. I think it's important as well for insureds to, upon learning of a claim or becoming aware of a circumstance, to notify the insurer, but also to collate all information. And I think Glenn spoke a little bit to this. Collate all the information relevant to the matter and make them available to insurers. And this includes everything, whether you deem it important or unimportant. But also to comply and cooperate with insurers during the assessment of the claim. Insureds are often, as you can appreciate, are very distressed upon receiving a claim, and this comes as no surprise. But insureds should refrain from engaging with third parties, but rather immediately notify a claim through to their broker, who will advise their insurer and will advise them on how best to attend to the management of the matter.
So you're saying don't do the, let me try and sort this out myself.
No.
Okay.
Bad results.
All right.
Yeah. And I think irrespective of the value of the claim, so, often they think because the claim is negligible, we can try and, have it resolved quickly. That sometimes comes back to bite them. So rather make no offers of settlement, but rather get your insurers involved and they will attend to the necessary.
Leave it to the pros.
Absolutely.
Okay. So as we close, Glenn, what is it about the Leppard way that makes this company unique? In a world of underwriters aplenty, what makes Leppard stand out?
Okay, so I'd like to just refer to a Simon Sinek video clip And Simon tells of a story where he's sitting in the back of a taxi with one of the top Apple execs, and he decides, time to stir the pot. So he looks across and tells them that he spoke at the Microsoft Summit, and that when he was done, they gave him their version of the iPad, and that it was way better than the iPad that Apple has on the market. The Apple exec sort of slowly looked at him and said, I have no doubt.
Sure, that's confidence.
Yeah, so Simon was like, okay, conversation over. Most of us would have been incredibly inquisitive. What does it do? Why is it so much better? How can we meet it? How can we match it? Because we're all obsessed with our opposition and what they're doing and how they're doing it. But actually, Apple are just competing against themselves. Sometimes they'll be ahead, sometimes behind. But if you compete against yourself, you'll be ahead more often than not. So, at Leppard, we acknowledge our competitors and we respect them. But we're competing against ourselves to set new standards and raise our bar to the next level.
I think that's a great place to land it. This brings us to the end of the final episode in this series of Ensuring Trust with Leppard. I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot about the Leppard way and their products. To listen to previous episodes, check out the social media channels on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook under Leppard Underwriting, and on Twitter at Leppard_writing. To find out more about Leppard products or to get support as a broker, visit leppard.co.za. Till we meet again, make sure your reputation is protected.